Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leather Supply, and this is the Leather Element. If you've got a good question for us or a good idea for a leather element, drop it in the comment box below. Also, if you want to know when our videos release, just click your notifications. You'll know exactly when these come out. So how about some shop tricks? I'm hoping there's something in here that's going to help out. And we're going to start with one that in my experience can be very irritating, but there's an easy fix. I love our double-sided tape, use it on most projects, and in fact I think this is one of the best products Weaver's ever added. But if you've ever tried to separate the backing from the tape on a softer leather, it will make you question your very existence. There's an easy way around this. Well, first off, trying to separate, the tape and the backing, almost impossible. Let's just use a scratch awl or needles or an art knife will do. But all we're going to do here, let's come in from the side. There we go. That separates it, makes the whole thing very easy. We should all be using a quality revolving or rotary punch, but for those of us that are new, we're probably using a cheap craft store tool. Not knocking it, that's exactly where I started. But the problem there is that we've got cheap steel on our tubes. Well, they're going to dull, absolutely, but the bigger problem, what I found, is that these are going to start to crack. Pieces are going to break off, we're going to have bad nicks in this. Where I'm going with this is when we go to punch a hole, it's not going to punch all the way through. So now we have to take an awl, and we've all done this. Push that plug through, either rip it or tear it off. That leaves a very ragged hole. Yeah, not to mention very irritating. So, first answer here, let's get a quality revolving punch. This is an affordable punch. We've got replaceable tubes on this. This is our heavy duty punch. It's a good quality tool. But here's where I'm going with this. Let's take the leather we're going to punch a hole in. Let's put a piece of scrap behind that. And now we punch right through. And even with a bad tube, we still get a very clean hole. Soft or thin leathers, same situation. But again, let's put that over some scrap. And again, we get a very clean, even hole, even if our tubes are cracked or just dull. We've seen this in a couple of videos, but for those of us that aren't familiar, this is a big help. So we've got our marble, the center of our leather shop, and we've got our punch board. We're going to use both on every project. The problem is that punch board, very slick on that marble. That's a recipe for disaster. So I've got just a square foot of scrap here. Suede works great. This is just a chrome tan, roughly 4 to 5 with a buff finish. But when I drop that onto my marble, that doesn't move at all. We're going to get a good clean punch every time. Now we're leather crafters. Giving up a square foot of leather, that can be a little bit tough. But I will say this. This is about 15 years old, so I certainly got my use out of that piece of leather. But right here, this is just the padded shelf paper for the cabinets. In our kitchen, it's going to do exactly the same thing. And it's actually going to deaden the sound a little bit. Maybe not enough to really matter, but maybe that'll help let us work a little bit later in the evening. Now with this, it's relatively thin, 1 ply, so I've just glued 2 plies together. That's actually perfect. That's going to be a big help. Lining our projects comes with so many pluses, but one of the biggest for me is that we can take a thinner weight or a lighter weight leather, bring in another leather behind that. Now we have ample body. So when we glue these, typically I like the contact cement. I'm going to have to put cement on both pieces, then we'll adhere these together. The white glue, this is a great way to go, the Leathercraft cement. Here's the problem. So on a smaller panel or panels, we've got a brush and the cap on our S18. Doesn't take much time. When we jump over to our larger projects, this is a briefcase. When we line this, we've got about 5 square feet of leather we've got to add glue to. Just a roller brush, a trim brush, and a small tray, both inexpensive. It would take no time at all to apply glue to these panels. The problem is in between. The brush too small, the roller too big. We've got 2 glue spreaders that are just right. We could pour some glue down the middle, and let's just wick or squeegee that right to the edge. Makes the whole thing very easy. In fact, we get both of these in a pack. I like this because I do a lot of the filigree. That's going to be a big help with glue there. Now, one more point. These are silicone, so it's best if used with a Leathercraft cement. But we can use these with our contact cement. But let's clean those immediately. They'll be fine. I love to hand sew. It's It's a basic technique for us leather crafters. We don't need an expensive machine to put in a pretty strong stitch line. But one of my problems, I am bad about burnishing my fingers. Here's what I'm talking about. So if I'm sewing thicker pieces, 3 8 to 9s back to back, or I'm going long distance, I'm so bad about not thinking about it. And I had my tension right there on my pinkies. So not long down the road, I'm going to start burnishing my pinkies. We don't want that. Well, now we can use tape. Some creative folks have made little sleeves to go on their fingers, but neither really work for me because I rely so much on feel when I'm adding the tension on that last thread. How about we do this? Let's first off tighten our first stitch there, second, third. There are all kinds of ways we can tighten the thread around our hand without relying on one area. Now, here's another problem. We finish our stitch line, we get right down to the end, and that is all the thread we have left. We've got enough to tie our knot, but I'm not going to be able to tighten that knot with that small amount of thread. Let's take two of our smaller stamp tools with a smaller shank. We can roll those onto that thread. Good. And if I hold that thread with my thumb, there we go, we can see that I have ample strength there to tighten that knot down. But on that same note, for those of us that may have pain in our hands, we don't have a lot of strength in our hands, or we're going through some very thick leather, let's jump up to our stamp tools, the larger shank on these. Let's wrap twice, maybe 3 times. Now, I can add so much tension to that. If that were a linen thread, I'd break it. I hope there's something here that's going to help you out. We've got the best craft going. Let's enjoy every minute in our shop. And if we do, well, the outcome of our projects, they will definitely reflect that. Thanks for taking time to watch The Leather Element. Good luck with your projects.